Hey everyone, James Marin here, and in this video I'm going to break down this Pepsi sponsored live show at the SoFi Stadium that I operated on. It was basically like a Pepsi funded music video, only with a much more live feel to it and with some really cool setups. Some main takeaways for this video will be how the project was shot and why it was a multicam shoot. I'll also be providing some operating tips for Handheld and some operating tips for operating wheels on Technocrane. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so here's our build on our A camera, and as you can see, it's an ARRI Alexa Mini, and we're shooting on TLS rehoused Canon K35 prime lenses. We have a shark fin in the back so we could hot swap the battery and not have to power down the camera. And a shark fin is also super helpful for balancing the camera when it needs more weight in the back. And lastly, we have the Light Ranger, which is a focus assist system. And here's a quick glance at B camera, which is essentially the same thing as A, obviously using the same lenses. It's still a Alexa Mini. The only difference is that it doesn't have a Light Ranger, and that's pretty much the only difference. Here we have our first setup of the day. This is what we call a menace arm. And a menace arm is used whenever you want to take a light and set it off at a distance. And here we have two light mats. They're one of the bigger ones, and they're attached by speed rail to sort of create one large unit. And that was being used as the key light. And then over here in the corner you could see they were starting to set up Astera tubes that they put along each one of these little I guess lockers, I don't know what you call them, but they basically just put them here where I'm showing the mouse, all alongside the set, so it could be used as practicals but also illuminate the set as well. And a practical, for those of you that may not have heard the term before, it's basically any light that one would use that is in the frame. So whether that's a movie light that's in the frame, or just a lamp or whatever, something that appears to be decorative, that's called a practical. You can also see there's some grid on the light itself, so it could keep the light more directional and not spill on the sides. And this is pretty much the first setup of the day. Here's what the final frame looks like, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about the lighting or too much more detail about the lighting. If you have any questions about that, I highly encourage that you send a DM to Doug Porter, who was the DP on this shoot. He'll probably be more than happy to answer any lighting questions that you might have after seeing this video. But what I can say is that here are the Astera tubes that we're playing as practicals, and most of the video looks like this. It's pretty much this like blue ambient light and these yellow sort of like accents to the scene. So in terms of the camera work, here we have one of the first takes of the day, and the reason we are using two cameras is because the shoot was only one day and we really needed to maximize our coverage of each and every setup and performance. Here we're grabbing some stuff without our main talent, J-Rock, and the big thing I want to point out is that when you're operating on something like this, you really want to do a few things. The first is to have a game plan on who is covering what. In this case, I had a much tighter lens and was grabbing two shots in singles of everyone that's sort of on the left side of the setup, while Doug was covering much wider angles down the middle and towards the right side of the setup. The second thing I want to note is that here you can see that Doug has a spotter who is doing a really excellent job of making sure that he doesn't trip over the base of the stand over there. And that when it comes to shooting two cameras like this, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have spotters. Not just because of the tripping hazard, but when you're running two cameras like this and it's got a lot of movement to it, the last thing that you want is for the operators to bump into one another, frankly, because it would probably be really embarrassing. And lastly, when deciding on what focal length you should be using on B camera, remember that a good rule of thumb is to always skip a size up from what A cam is shooting. So for example, if A cam is running with a 35, don't use a 50, but rather skip it and go to the next tightest lens. So something like a 65 or 75, would work much better. And the reason being is that you really want to ensure that they could cut to your shot whenever they want without it being too similar in focal length or frame size as a camera. Here is our second setup, which is where we started to do some Technocrane stuff, and our Technocrane was provided by the amazing people over at Elite Camera Support. So big shout out to the people over there, and an extra shout out to James, who was our Technocrane operator, and he just did an amazing job swinging the arm and made it really easy to get exactly the kind of shots that we wanted. In the back, there are two big LED panels that are playing some pre-recorded B-roll that is meant to be a part of the set. Here's an angle from my GoPro that shows you what the scene looks like. They ended up adding some, let me skip ahead here a little bit. They ended up adding some stage lights. It's supposed to have like a live performance feel, so that's why, or I'm guessing that's why they ended up with so many theatrical lights as opposed to movie lights or lights that you'd see on a typical set. And they also added a bunch of fog to give it some atmosphere. Now, in terms of the actual coverage that we shot here, Technocrane really got to shine and do some like sweeping moves, some moves where it starts boomed up really high, as you can see right here, and then booming down rather quickly to kind of give it a lot of dynamic, or to give it a dynamic feel. And here you could see Doug, who is on sticks, and I thought it was really genius that they got him, or somebody decided on getting some rolling spreaders here, because it really allowed him to relocate the camera really quickly, and just kind of, instead of having to pick up the camera and move it to get a different angle, all he had to do was simply roll along. And he was on a big zoom, just getting some close-ups. And again, I think the rolling spreaders, which is just a tripod base with wheels, really allowed him to just relocate and get a different angle in a really efficient way. So I thought that was really smart. And lastly, here we have our final setup of the day, which in my opinion was the coolest setup because we got to be like in the stadium, which was a really awesome experience. And again, Technocrane really got to shine here, and it really shows how this was the right tool for the job, because had there not been Technocrane, you'd have to shoot either on the stage or beneath the stage on the floor of the stadium, sort of shooting up. And although both pieces of coverage would have worked, the Technocrane really shows off just how enormous the space really is, and also gives it this larger than life feel. Here I have a freeze frame from the GoPro so I could point out a few things to you guys. The first being that there is a balloon in the scene that we're using, so it could illuminate the stage and sort of give us 360 lighting, so we could be lit for any angle. The other thing is that it was really cool that the stadium turned on all of the LED lights over here displaying the Pepsi logo, and then off to the side, all of these LEDs here that are surrounding the stadium had the artist J-Rock. It had his name on it, so it was really cool to see all of that happening in the frame. They basically served as practicals. The other thing to point out here is the coverage that we got. You can see Doug is here on a ladder, so he could be eye level or more eye level to the artist himself, who's on a stage. And again, sort of like the last setup that we had, he's on a big zoom, I think probably like a 12:1 or like 11:1, something big, so we can get a close-up. And then it's, where am I? Oh, like we're like over here. Here I am on the wheels, and I'm just getting a bunch of sweeping wides on the Technocrane with a 24mm. And then another kind of fun fact is that what was interesting about the Technocrane that we got, which is a 30-foot Technocrane, is that it was the biggest Technocrane that we could get and put on the actual field, because had we gotten the next biggest, which is a 50-foot, it would have been too heavy and it would have actually damaged the field itself because of the weight. So that's a little, I guess, fact for you guys, so you could hopefully use that information in the future and know that there are limits to Technocrane stuff and considerations that you need to have. Now, the last tip that I want to give is for operating wheels. It's super important to set the speed on the head to match the speed of the arm that's being swung. If you set it too slow, you'll be spinning the wheel very fast just to keep up, and if you set it too fast, then you're left having to do very slow and fine movements, and it just doesn't feel as controlled. It could also be sort of jolty, for lack of a better word, if you spin the wheel at an inconsistent speed. So once I have my speed set, I usually bump it up a notch or two, especially for music videos, because a lot of times you're shooting performances that are mostly unrehearsed, and if talent is moving all over the place, then that means the crane op has to swing the arm faster and you have to rotate the wheel faster yourself. So it's always a good idea to leave yourself with a little bit of room in case you need to go faster on the fly. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some value out of this video and how I broke it down, and that you're able to take what I put here today and put it into your future projects. I appreciate you taking the time to check out this video, and I hope you have a great day.